Well, good morning, guys. Another beautiful day at the off-grid. But you know what's not beautiful? I got some problems. My fish are dying. Ugh.
Gross.
And I think I know why they're dying. But we're gonna get into that in a minute.
This video is sponsored by Skillshare. You guys may have heard me talk about Skillshare in the past couple of videos, and the reason why I do it is because I think it's a great platform to learn new things. I've been a member of Skillshare for quite a long time now, and it's my go-to platform to learn new skills. I use Skillshare to brush up on my skills of stuff I've forgotten and I want kind of a refresher course. The latest course I've been taking is on woodworking, on how to make a table, and it's called Woodworking Techniques for Beginners, Part A, making a handcrafted table. I got it here on my phone. He goes into the nitty-gritty of building a table. So like all about selecting wood, planing wood, joining wood, you know, putting the legs on and the finish. And I find it really useful to kind of watch that and kind of use it as a stepping off point for building my own creation. Using the information I learned watching a Skillshare video on how to make tables, I was able to make this really cool kitchen island, and I'm sure you'll find information on how to build your next project. Skillshare users are creative and curious people, lifelong learners, beginners, pros, and dabblers. The first 1,000 people to use this link will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. And you know what's great? Right now, you get to explore the Skillshare library for free for an entire month. So sign up today to your free trial of Skillshare. You got nothing to lose, and you might learn something. Thanks, Skillshare, for being a loyal sponsor to my channel.
So if you have a pond at home, these are some of the strategies you guys can also employ in order to increase the water quality at your very own pond. I'll tell you what is good about this pond and what we've already discovered that is acceptable to fish life in this pond. We've checked the water temperature at 63 degrees throughout the entire water column at the top and at the bottom, so that's well within the range for trout to thrive. We have an oxygen aerator system from the Dugout Dudes. It's providing enough oxygen for our fish, but I believe what we don't have a handle on is high turbidity or silting and cloudiness of the water. So what's happening, I believe, our fish are dying because they don't have clear enough water. So you guys may be dealing with this problem in your backyard pond, your dug pond that potentially has, you know, clay sandy soil that's distributing itself through the water. So today we're going to try to figure out and solve the problem of high turbidity in this pond. I know my fish are dying because I found 3 of them dead. I found 2 that were up along the bank, and the following day I actually found one sitting over here, and it had floated up. It was covered in sand, silty stuff. So I'm thinking the problem is that the cloudiness in the water is preventing them to get enough oxygen, because I've pretty much checked all the other boxes for this, and as you can see, the water is not exactly clear. I can't really see the bottom of it. So you know what? We're going to get to the bottom of it today in this video. And what I'm going to do now is actually dip my GoPro into the pond in different locations to just visually see the clarity of the water before any treatment whatsoever is done, just so I can, you know, have a visual representation, because I think that's important to do as well. So let's dip the GoPro in and see what we have. You can see the how easy that silts up. Just by touching it, you can see the clay bottom, and then it just kind of, as soon as it touches any sort of water movement, it just turns to clay. See it? It's all just silted right up. You can see the erosion occurring on the sides of the bank. High turbidity can be caused by silt, mud, algae, plant pieces, melting glaciers, sawdust, wood ashes, or chemicals in the water. Turbidity increases in rivers and lakes water mainly because of floating algae, soil washing from the banks into the water, fires, or from industrial activities such as mining, logging, and dredging. In our case, the turbidity in the water is caused by walking, soil erosion, and just basically activities around the pond. I don't think it's anything to do with, you know, the bottom dwellers or crayfish or even like goldfish or, you know, carp. Any kind of like bottom dwelling fish tend to go to the bottom and stir it up. Trout generally aren't bottom feeders, so I don't think it's caused by anything that we've put in the pond. one of the possible solutions to the clay on the edge problem is to line the entire perimeter along the water's edge with rock, kind of like stack them up so any kind of wave action won't actually get to the clay area to actually wash it into the pond. Now we've started that near the end of the pond, and it seems to be working really well. We just got to make our way all the way around. Maybe during low water levels in the middle of summer, we'll be able to get to the other sides of the pond in order to line the edge, because it's definitely helped, but it's very labor intensive, and right now if we add more stone to the edge, we might actually be making it worse, because it's kind of like in the middle of growing season. Maybe once the fish are out, we can address that a little bit more intensively. You can see where this rock is, that if the water rushes up against it, obviously it's just going to run itself back into the pond, and it's not going to disturb any of the clay. You can kind of see that just runs back into the pond. No turbidity. But if you look over here and you've got this clay, you can see as soon as you do that, you can see the water start to get cloudy. So just imagine when it rains heavily, all the water gets washed down this little bank here, grabs a little bit of this clay sand, and just makes the whole thing cloudy. It hasn't rained for a day, so we've settled out a lot of the clay in the water. So our strategy behind this rock wall is any kind of rock we find on the property, we bring it down here. So it's kind of like it's on the honey-do list. So you see a rock, you bring it down to the pond and you stack it. In a fun childhood memory I had at my cottage up in Commander Lake, we built a rock dock, and that's what we did pretty much all summers. We pulled rocks out of the lake and put them in this crib, and that was the rock dock, the famous rock dock. So this is part of my childhood, moving rocks. What do you think, Don? It's the same thing. You were picking rocks in a field though, right?
That's right, off for agricultural land.
Farmer's field. Yeah, rocks are the farmer's enemy. So there we go. Another rock to prevent.
Brick in the wall.
Another brick in the wall, indeed, right there. So as you can see, we've kind of been working our way along the edge. We've got to do a little bit more over here, but as you can see, we've got some sort of greenery established, and we're preventing some erosion. So over there, we've added some topsoil, and we're going to reseed that area there. Clay is so fine it can clog up the gills of trout and cause them to die from suffocation. Large amounts of suspended soils and clay may clog the gills of fish and kill them directly. The gills of fish can become clogged and reduce the fish's ability to extract oxygen from the water. High turbidity can also make it difficult for a fish to see, and if a fish can't see, it can't feed. Okay, so we've overseeded the entire area, meaning the grasses and stuff will come up. So that is going to prevent a lot of the fine rain from getting at any kind of speed to get in there and erode our soil. So the next plan of my attack is going to be transplanting some trees. So we've got some trees that are in less than ideal location up in that pine forest. They're not going to get enough sunlight, and the gist of it is that forest has to be pretty much knocked down, and any of those little tiny trees that are down below are going to get damaged in the process. So we're just going to relocate those guys down to the pond's edge, because what that'll do is it'll allow the roots to go down and further secure our soil along the pond's edge. An ideal tree for that would be cedar, or a native tree for this area would be like a balsam. Their roots kind of go out in a horizontal fashion, so those guys would do well there. If you had a willow, like a weeping willow, those would work as well too, because those love water and they hold a lot of stuff together. So we're just heading up to the top side just to find some trees that are readily available, and then we can dig them up and transplant them. So these little white cedars here were actually, I moved them when I built my off-grid shop because they were in the way and I didn't want them to die. I actually just one shovel full and actually moved them. That was like a couple years ago. So they're not that far in the ground. As you can see, they're just kind of sitting here in clumps. I could probably pick them up with my hand. Don's got a shovel. We're just going to shovel them into the bucket and then move them down to the edge of the pond, because those things are sort of ideal for soil erosion. Fish Farm Supply Company actually ships internationally, so if you guys need any kind of fish stuff, you guys can look these guys up. The link will be in the description below. This is not a paid sponsor, so yeah, they're just, it seems like a really cool store, so I'm just gonna bring it to your guys' attention if you're looking for specialty product of this nature. I asked some people around here, and they're fishy people. They don't really want to appear on camera, and that's okay, but they said, you know what, I can walk around and have a look. So they've given me kind of like the Cole's Notes version on what I can do in order to kind of maintain fish.
You'd kind of use both. So this would regulate the pressure,
Okay.
and then that would regulate the flow.
So if you had like an oxygen, like a scuba tank,
Yeah.
essentially. Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing is we were talking about fish filters and water filters in order to keep the pond, and they said it was kind of going to be cost prohibitive for a pond that size. So they do sell ponds filters for backyard ponds, and these are some of them here, as you can see, like $125. You've got sort of like a garden pond filter. So they were saying, like, you know, you need a whole pile of power in order to run a filter to filter a pond that size. So you kind of want to deal with the problems that are causing the water quality to degrade. We got aeration filter rocks. So this is kind of cool. You hook up to the aerator. We already have an aerator in the pond. It's from the Dugout Dude, and it's run on solar. So these are kind of neat, because you can kind of see they got the little NPT fitting, so they screw on, and then it's got a rock that has bubbles up. But our stone is probably slightly larger than this guy here, this 8-inch stone. So we're getting plenty of oxygen in the pond. I don't believe that the fish are dying because of lack of oxygen. I'm pretty much leaning towards water quality and dissolved solids or clay leaching into my water. Other thing is really cool over here is they have all the gauges, like the flow control sensors. So if you're trying to transport fish, when we actually put the fish in the pond, we had an oxygen bottle with a flow control. So this is kind of like the pressure regulator for the oxygen tanks, and then the again, flow control for the oxygen in order to keep your fish while you're transporting. And that might be something that we might look into in the future when we do transport them, to ensure that we have a good quality air pump. You know what's interesting? So I've never been to the store before, but the other day I was looking for basically fittings for the stock tank in order to get my pump installed. So if you guys are, you know, having your stock tank and you want to make your swimming pool and you don't have outlets, maybe you don't have a drain plug in it, like the guys over at Livestock Equipment Canada, you can actually buy these guys. These are the fittings that actually screw onto the side and bolt, and it's got a little rubber gasket on it in order to seal it, so you can actually hook up a pump, so you can have an inlet and an outlet and circulate it through your filter, which is really cool. They even have really, really big ones. You got a massive hole. Look at that. It's made in Winnipeg, Canada. That's interesting. You don't see stuff made in Canada very often. Is it just me, or does everybody else get excited with like brass barb fittings? These are cool. They got a whole selection of brass barbed fittings. So if you've got, well, even like a fish tank or anything like that, you've got all the little brass fittings. Like this is a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch NPT fitting. That's pretty neat. Crazy barbed fittings. The stainless steel. Actually, that's galvanized. That's a nipple. That's a big nipple. Look at that. That's a crazy stainless steel nipple. It's like a kid in a candy store. They've got all of the PVC fittings you can imagine. Look at them all. So I was talking to them about predators and the heron that we have, and I was told that if we had a heron decoy, you'd have to probably move it every 4 to 6 hours around the pond in order to prevent the heron from getting used to it and just coming down and making friends with the heron. So I don't know what this guy does. This is kind of, I don't know, it's the beach ball with a thingy jigger. I don't know if that would work to get rid of our heron, or like we got a bald eagle with, it looks like it has a trout. Hopefully we don't have any bald eagles flying down there. A coyote decoy. And look at this guy. We got a crocodile. You got to just float a crocodile along anything. That actually might deter my daughter, because that's kind of scary. It's got a sparkly eye. It's probably more of a Floridian thing. They got pond dye as well, so you can pick blue or black. I don't know who the heck would want black. You'd have like a black hole. That'd be creepy. I guess it's kind of mimics Northern Ontario more, so like the deep dark black you would see in the lake. Yeah, I don't think I want a black pond, but the blue's kind of cool. What I ended up buying was aluminum sulfate, and from what I understand, it's kind of like a magical cure for solids that are sitting in the water column. Now, it's recommended to get, well, it comes in one size, which is a 25 pound bag. So you sprinkle it, broadcast it amongst the pond, and it allows the solids to kind of clump together and fall to the bottom. And apparently, depending on the water source and how many often it turns over, you don't have to do this very often. And where I was reading was about like 10 to 15 years, which I think that's optimistic. So we're gonna give this a whirl, because that's, you know, it's worth a try. And then I got actually a little pamphlet on no more muck, which allow the anything that builds up in the bottom of the pond, which would be like organic material, leaves, decaying fish, any kind of stuff like that. So like it'll break it down and then dissolve it. So that's maybe a future consideration. All right, now that we've done some preventative measures in order to prevent the turbidity or the clay from entering the pond, we're going to do a little bit of a water test now on what we have in order to actually fix the water we currently have. So we could you know, prevent all of the water from entering the pond or filter it out so when it enters the pond it's perfectly clear. But if the pond itself is causing the problem, then we have to deal with the water itself. Now I've got a little bit of science experiment that I'm going to try in order to see if we can amend the water using aluminum sulfate, which is apparently a miracle cure based on what I've read. So what the experiment entails is actually 6 jugs of water. So I'm gonna grab those now. So you can see it's not, well, it's not clear, but it's not terribly cloudy. So anyways, we're gonna grab 6 jugs of water and we're going to add aluminum sulfate into the water to see if it settles out those solids. Okay, one last thing I'm going to check before I even think about putting aluminum sulfate is the pH of my water. So I have a little test gauge here. I got my test strip here. I'm going to dip it in the water, shake it off, and then see what pH my actual pond water is. Because I believe if your pH is higher than 8.5, you put aluminum sulfate in your water, it'll kill all your fish. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure our pH is low, and I'm hoping it's low because I've already bought the aluminum sulfate. My pH, how long should we let this sit for? Don's right behind the camera. How long do you think we should let this sit for?
I can't remember. What does it say?
It appears as though it's pH of a 7. So it looks like we're within range. Like you can, I don't know if you guys can see that. We're at 7, pH of 7. I think that's pretty much neutral, I think. It's right in the middle. It's a high of 12 and a low of 1, but we're 7, so that's... All right, so I've taken 6 different samples in 6 different jars. I've got myself 2 controls, which is one's got just clear water in it, and the other one has pond water, which we're not going to treat. And then there's 4 jugs we're going to treat with different levels of aluminum sulfate. So Don did some chemistry math and come up with a bunch of numbers that we're going to use to determine how much aluminum sulfate we want to broadcast out of the pond. So we've discovered that to treat a pond, it's 150 to 300 pounds per acre. We've determined that our pond is 0.04 acres. So we figured we'll use between 6 and 12 pounds. That's a pretty big, it's like use this much or double that. I guess it's not crazy scientific, this aluminum sulfate. I'm sure we can go into it in more detail. Perhaps we'll try 6 pounds to begin with and then go up to 12 pounds if it doesn't work. We're still watching our water samples to determine which quantity of aluminum sulfate actually did the trick. Preliminary findings are that the least amount of aluminum sulfate that we put in the water seems to be, it's turning the chunks into clouds of things, and the one with the most seems to have no chunks in it, no like clouds. Like by clouds, it looks like there's a floating cloud that's in the sky. It's kind of neat. Yeah, that's what we're finding right now. So we're gonna let it sit there for 12 hours to determine exactly what's going to happen with the water. If we come back in 12 hours and we find that the water is perfectly clear with the least amount, we can probably go with 6 pounds. And if it's the clearest with the most, then we'll probably go with the 12 pounds. Okay, so I got my jars all lined up. This is my plan. I'm going to put a 1/4 teaspoon in here. I'm going to put a 1/2 teaspoon in here. I'm going to put a full teaspoon in here. And then I'm going to put 2 in here. And this is my control. This is not going to be changed. And this is just clear water. So if you guys can see the gradient, well, you mostly see the gradient. These are all the same. This one is clear water. So let's start our process. There's our 1/4 teaspoon. Sprinkle it half. This one's a full. This one's 2. And now we wait 12 hours. So out of curiosity, I tried the test strip and I put it in the strongest one, and we have a pH of 6. So we've dropped from about 7, 7.5 to 6, which is still within our range for our fish population by putting 2 tablespoons in a liter of water. So that's our control. You can see it's perfectly clear. And this is our least amount. You can see there's kind of like a cloudy sort of like blobs of whatever that is. It's kind of consolidated it all, which is kind of neat. Top has kind of got some other chunks. And then it goes on from there. It's only been a couple of hours since we've put it in. That's number 2, which has a half a teaspoon in a liter. And that one doesn't have any clumps at all, but it has stuff at the top. It's kind of formed at the top. And then this is the 2 tablespoons, which is teaspoons, sorry, 2 teaspoons. And then you can see there's nothing at the bottom. There's nothing at the top, but the thing is it looks like our control, which is strange. All right, it's been 12 hours, a little bit more than 12 hours, and I haven't actually looked at the jars yet. My brother's here from Wooded Beardsman. He's gonna...
Excited or something?
I am excited. It's gonna be exciting because we did this science experiment. We did a lot of math, and we figured it out, and we haven't yet checked it out to see what...
I'm just thinking about the fish.
Yeah, well...
Thinking about the fish just sucking on clay molecules and all up in their gills and like, let's get the stuff in the water.
Well, yeah, but we don't want to put too much of the water, because if you do that, you raise the pH, or you lower the pH, increases the acidity, and they'll die.
Okay, well, maybe we should do it right then.
That's right. So we're gonna go look to make sure we have enough to clear the water, but not kill the fish. All right, let's go check it out. All right, Chris, what do you think of the findings? What do you think this one is?
Is that no treatment?
No treatment.
That looks pretty good.
I know, it does look pretty good.
So why did, that's curious, because the pond, well, I guess accumulation
it's
over the depth.
8 feet of depth. You've got that, so...
Well, it doesn't look good compared to
like that's tap water.
tap water. There's a notable difference. And then obviously, I'm guessing you made a gradient.
So what do you think? What do you think this? So this one here, this first one. What do you think it is?
What do you mean?
How much do you think we put it? Like, do you think
I
there's
don't
lots in there or little in there?
Well, I'm guessing you made a gradient. If you were smart, you made a gradient. If you were trying to trick me, you made, like, you kind of randomized it. But it looks like, I don't know, like, obviously there's sediment collecting on the top of everything, and there's nothing on the bottom, which I think is kind of curious. This one looks like there's probably the least amount of solution added to it, and this is probably the second least, and then this is maybe the most.
Do you think I tried to trick you?
Well, I don't know, because these ones look the clearest, right?
Yeah, which
So-
is interesting. So
Did I not do
you're wrong.
I'm wrong.
You're wrong. So this has the least amount of treatment. This has the most.
Well, that's weird,
Yeah.
because this has,
Well, there's bigger clumps in this. Like you can see the green.
right.
You can see the green stuff kind of floating at the top, like definitive clumps. This has the least. This has a 1/4 teaspoon. This has a 1/2 teaspoon. This has 1. This has 2.
Well, so this is the best.
Yeah, which is, yeah, it's clumping. It's kind of like got the clearest and the clumps. You can see the least amount. The clumps are kind of rising. It looks like the algae is actually rising to the surface and creating sort of like a cloud. So I don't know if we can skim that off at the end.
Maybe, because it doesn't sink. I'm trying to poke it to make it sink.
Yeah,
And am I going to fry my hand here or anything?
I don't think so. It's
not
safe for
toxic?
fish.
Like maybe if you agitate it after a while, like it'll
Sink to the
Well,
look at it sink
there.
to the bottom.
It is sinking to the bottom. So, you know, I think we might have to revisit this in a second after we agitate it and drop it down into the water column.
It does say if you can put it in the pond and then add a motorboat to it and just kind of stir it up. Like that's the actual, like in the PDF document that I read. We'd actually put a link to that PDF document in the description if you guys are curious. But it says to use a motorboat and kind of circulate your water throughout your pond in order to kind of thoroughly mix it in. So I don't know. Or we could use a trash pump and just kind of like or fire hose it.
Just ruin the experiment.
Did you?
It's all clumped up. Like, you can decide what you want to add into it. I think all of them produced a good result. It's all doing that clumping, but it's clumping. It's not falling. So I think that's kind of interesting. So you've got kind of a mixed.
But if you could, if it clumps it, you could skim it off. Like if it just kind of makes a big film at the top, you could skim the whole top of the pond and get rid of it.
I was under the impression that it would sink to the bottom, right? And then you would have like clear water at the top, and then clumps at the bottom. But this is not a real world test. This is just a sample test. So in real life, it's going to get agitated.
Yes, but
And
now,
maybe it'll fall. Now it's suspended, right? It's suspended in clumps.
well, maybe like you could see the bottom is the clearest now.
That's what I'm saying. So it's made it come up to the top. So I guess, you know, it did make it clearer. It's just whether or not the results are going to be clumping at the top or clumping at the bottom. So I'm interested to see what will happen long term, maybe over a few days, and with it being agitated.
Based on our calculation, we need between 6 and 12 pounds to do our 0.04 acres of pond. So how many pounds do you want to do, Chris?
Well, you can always add more.
So do you want to start with 6 pounds?
Yeah, try 6 pounds and, you know, leave it for, what, 3 days? I think, because I was doing some research too, and it had a range of effectiveness. It was like, well, it works in an hour. And then some other people said it works in 3 days. And some people said it works 3 days and then it keeps working forever. So try the least amount. And then if you don't like it, then add more, because you can't take it out.
Well, if you have a larger pond, it's 150 pounds to 300 pounds per acre. So if you have a large pond, this is...
It could be hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
It is a solution.
Thousands of dollars.
You're also supposed to sprinkle it on the top of the pond and get kind of like, if you're trying to do acres and acres of pond, that's a pretty tall order to sprinkle a lot of... Yes. Anyways, okay. Let's
do something.
Let's do something. Let's get 6 pounds mixed out. I got the wife's you know, weight scale. I'm going to stand on it, and then we're going to dump it into a bucket because we don't have a proper scale. So that should work. And yeah, let's get started. We're close. 151. I could probably take a 150, 153. 6 pounds of aluminum sulfate. There's all sorts of warnings on the side of this stuff. It says, you know, do not breathe it. You know, it's a skin irritation. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of like concrete or, you know, cement or Portland. I'm going to treat it like that. I got my respirator on, got my gloves on. We kind of want to cover the entire surface area with 6 pounds, so I'll kind of limit my sprinkle because you want it to sprinkle and it kind of coat the entire water column.
So Kevin's got the respirator on, so I'm going to fill in the blanks here, but after I stirred it, it's actually settled down to the bottom of each one, and so obviously the control is the clearest still, but the rest of it is now sitting on the bottom rather than having most of it up on the top. So that seems to work. And then the gradient, I still think it's probably all about the same. I wouldn't say one is better than the other, but if you had to, I guess you would say that one was the best. Kevin thinks that one's the best.
Look at the big clumps, right?
The big clumps. I don't know.
It's clearer if you look directly through it. This is a little cloudier.
I'd say it's pretty close.
Can we hold that?
Well, can you look at it? Here, you look at the AquaView and I'll stick it in. Can you see anything?
No.
There's no visibility?
Nothing. No visibility.
Like a poke a fish in the face to see it. Here, let's see if I'm on the bottom yet. You might be able to see the bottom.
Oh, there's the bottom.
So you can see the bottom, so there's a little bit of visibility, but you can't really see through the water column at all.
Visibility is like a foot, maybe.
Oh, what's that? That's just the bottom again. Yeah, it's maybe like a couple of inches, maybe 2 or 3 inches. Like on some super clear lakes, even down 60 feet ice fishing with this thing, you can see, you know, 4, 5, 6, 10 feet in the water column right now. Like there's absolutely zero, like inches. It'd be like swimming and snorkeling in a bog. So we'll see what this treatment can do. This is a before control shot of the pond at about 17 millimeters on my camera, just to give you guys an exact sort of reference point. So there has been no treatment in the pond. As you can see, it is mid-morning. We've got a lot of pollen on the top of the pond. The aerator seems to be going, slightly overcast, and then we're going to see once we treat the pond to see how well it does at consolidating the clay and seeing if it clears it up. It's a lovely day for a boat. I think we're making it more silty.
Well, maybe a little bit, but it's for the betterment of the pond. I think we should go that way. We should go to paddle.
Well, I want to see what's on the bottom still.
Okay.
Here, hold that.
All right, holding. Oh. We need a big bass boat for this thing or something, like a houseboat.
I'm trying to find a fish.
Try to find a fish? All right, go poke a fish in the face. Can you see that? You see that?
Not really.
Can't see nothing.
There's the bottom.
Where's the bottom? Is that rock?
You can't see.
We go right to the bottom.
I'm in the bottom.
Oh.
Can't tell you anything. All you can see is the bottom if you're like 2 seconds from it. No wonder the fish aren't coming up very good for feed. They have to swim like right below the surface to be able to see anything. Yeah, this is terrible clarity. This is like zero. It's like if you went down there, you would just think you were never going to come back to life again. It's like, where's the surface? I don't know. Where's the bottom? I don't know.
Look at the water temp though. It's almost perfect.
68. It was 62 with the other thermometer, so if it's gone up
Well, it could be like,
6
you know,
degrees.
calibration wise.
Wouldn't that be amazing if we could actually see a fish swim by?
Pretty clean.
It's clean, huh?
Well, it's clean, but it's cloudy.
It's clean if you're 2 inches from the bottom. Well, we're not going to find a fish that way.
We get a motorboat.
Look at this scummy
It's the
green, mucky water.
well, look at the shoreline is.
Yeah, see, that's what we're talking about. That's what makes it mucky, even just like a little bit of wave.
Okay. Well, you want the camera? I'll don my gloves and my mask. Safety eventually. All right, so we have our treatment done. We've added 6 pounds of aluminum sulfate. We've broadcasted throughout the entire surface of the pond, being sure to stir it around as we go to kind of disperse it. They do mention, you know, if you have a larger pond, you can use a motorboat to kind of disperse it throughout the entire pond. We don't have a motorboat, so we used a paddle. We dispersed it the best we could. And yeah, so Chris, how did it taste?
Like metal.
Really? Like
I don't know, it was just always like a faint flavor.
Oh.
It's like, I don't know, I say metallic because it's aluminum, but
Well, you're gonna live forever now. You're like Iron Man, but Aluminum Man.
I kept trying to spit it out and then rinse my water out of my mouth. But it's clumping up.
It is clumping up. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna wait. We're gonna wait 24 hours. So we'll check it in the evening. Well, tomorrow, actually, we'll check it tomorrow morning, and then we'll check it the following morning, and then the following morning after that, and see how well it's doing. And if it doesn't clarify our water, we're going to add more. We're going to probably 2 pound increments up to our max allowable poundage of 12 pounds for our specific size of pond, and we're going to see how it works. And also what I'm going to do is actually check the pH periodically to make sure we're not going too high of acidity, which would lower the pH. So that yeah, so all we have to do now is wait. Does it look like it's doing anything? Instant cure?
No,
No.
I'll be patient.
Patience. All right. Well,
It's clumping.
it is clumping, or is it because we just stirred it around? It might. It's gonna get worse before it gets better.
Is that what happens?
I don't know. Is that what doctors say? I don't know.
No, don't say that. Unless you're doing surgery.
Yes, that's right. We're gonna cut you open, and then you're going to feel better after it heals. So we actually stirred up quite a bit of sediment just by paddling around. So I guess we're gonna wait. I will check back with you in 24 hours. All right. So now we're at the start of day 2. So it's been 48 hours since we've applied the aluminum sulfate, and as you can see, the pond still seems cloudy. Now it might be like incrementally better. I can't really tell from the surface. We have had no rain. There's been some high winds, but visibility still seems to be about 6 inches or so because I can see stuff down on the surface of the pond. I can't see any fish, but it seems to have done nothing so far. So maybe we have to wait the full 72 hours before we retreat it, just to make sure we're not changing any of the pH. I'm going to do a pH test strip just to see what our alkalinity is. Seems to be no change in my test strip. It's still about 7.2, which is well within the range for fish habitat. The fish still seem to be feeding, so there's no real, mood or behavior change on the fish. So I'm going to dunk my GoPro in, have a look firsthand at clarity, and we'll see if there's a difference. Maybe we can go side by side to see if there's any clarity. But yeah, I don't know if there's any difference right now at this point. All right, we're gonna double up. We've got another 6 pounds of aluminum sulfate. We're gonna broadcast through the pond. We're gonna do it from the edge this time. Maybe if it slowly, you know, accumulates on the edge and then runs down into the pond after a big rain, it'll help. I don't know, that's my thoughts. Or I'm just gonna sprinkle it out and see how far I can get it. And if we can't get it to the middle, we'll take the boat out and sprinkle it out. So yeah, another 6 pounds going in.
This is a shot at day 4 after applying 12 pounds of aluminum sulfate. As you can see, pollen content is still very high and we've got a sheen over the water. As far as I can tell from the initial observation is that the water remains cloudy, or the high turbidity. I'm going to dip the GoPro into the water to see what sort of clarity we're achieving, but as far as I can tell, there is no change. I haven't checked the pH yet, but I will do so and perhaps retreat or add some more aluminum sulfate if the pH remains the same.
Fish seem to be happy and healthy, and they're doing their thing. They're swimming around and feeding. So, well, even though the water quality isn't the greatest, and we tried our best by adding the aluminum sulfate, it might not have been worth the money we spent on it, because our water quality essentially didn't change. It remained kind of that murky, cloudy with the turbidity. So I'm not sure it's a viable solution. Maybe we need to add more. If you guys have any ideas, maybe put your comment down below and we can maybe address this. Maybe we need to add more, but I don't want to add more to the extent where the acidity goes up in the water and then we can't sustain fish, but we have clear water. What's the point of that? I think overall, I think we haven't made it any worse, but I don't think we've made it any better yet. So we're gonna probably revisit this. This is a before control shot of the pond at about 17 millimeters on my camera, just to give you guys an exact sort of reference point. So there has been no treatment in the pond. This is a shot at day 4 after applying 12 pounds of aluminum sulfate. As you can see, pollen content is still very high and we've got a sheen over the water.